All right, we are going to examine a behemoth of an institution, the state. And it could well be that this is going to be a tour in which you're going to find yourself conflicted. This is the tour where we find that a lot of students end up finding out that they have been taken captive by the world. So, I love this tour, but you may not. So we're going to begin by looking at a definition. Politics, the science of government, that part of ethics which consists in the regulation and government of a nation or state for the preservation of its safety, peace, and prosperity, comprehending the defense of its existence and rights against foreign control or conquest, and the protection of its citizens in their rights, with the preservation and improvement of their morals. This is interesting. This definition talking about the issue of the state, politics, that begins by saying it's that part of ethics and ends by saying with the preservation and improvement of their morals. I don't know that people today would say that the state has any vested interest in either of those. But we're going to find out it has a great interest in them as well. Now, I have a question, an ethical question, since we are going to deal a little bit with ethics in the beginning. What is stealing? What is the definition of stealing?
Taking what's not yours.
Taking what is not yours. Okay, so stealing implies that there is ownership of property. And taking that from someone who owns that property is called stealing, right? Now, let me tell you a little story. See if we can kind of clarify this issue just a little bit more. Story of James and Heidi. James and Heidi married young. James loved farming. Heidi loved farming. And the Lord blessed them in that effort. They rented some land, and as God blessed them, they had the ability to be able to purchase some land. And over time, as God continued to bless them, they ended up with a fairly large farm. He also blessed them with children. Now, Heidi and James had a farm that you would call a picture farm. It's what you would dream about or think about if you pictured a perfect farm somewhere. A great family. Well, a tragedy occurred, and James and Heidi were killed in an auto accident. Now, Heidi's sister flew in to take care of the children in the midst of this tragedy. And while she was there, shortly after their death, there was a rumbling outside, and the door burst open, and a gang came into the house and began to take things. They began to take half of everything. Half of the stuff in the house. They pulled up a big truck. They began to take half of the cattle, half of all of the implements, and roared away. Now, would you call that stealing? Would you call that stealing, Lena?
I would.
You would. Would you call that stealing, David?
I'm still trying to decide what would I do. Yes, I would.
Yes, you would. Now, let me tell you that there's another piece of the story, though. What if I were to tell you that there was a reason that they took that stuff? What if I were to tell you that they needed it? You still say it's stealing?
Yeah.
What if I were to tell you that they needed the money because they had a sick dog?
Stealing.
Still stealing? What if I were to tell you that it was the governor?
Stealing.
What if I were to tell you that the governor passed a law that said he could do that?
Stealing.
You still say it's stealing? Well, do you know that we have a law like that in America?
Yeah.
That gives the state the right in certain situations to take half of a dead man's property? Is that stealing? These are serious questions. Because what we're dealing with in an attempt to try and understand this sphere that God has designed, one way to help understand this sphere is to ask boundary questions. Can the state steal? What do you think? Can the state steal, Joshua?
Looks like legally they can.
Legally they can. But let's talk about from God's perspective. God is the one who delivered to us the ethical notion of stealing, correct? Thou shalt not steal. The question before us is, can this sphere steal? Is it possible for this sphere to steal?
No.
No.
No. When you say no, then that means the state can ethically come and take your car if they want today.
Unfortunately, that's true, yeah.
And you'd say that would not be ethically wrong.
Ethically, no, because it's not against the rules.
Well, the question is, before God, is it wrong? That's the issue. Now, there's God is the one who said stealing is wrong. Can the state steal?
The state has entrusted the domain of not only its people, but of its assets.
So that you would say that the state owns everything.
No.
An issue here. An issue here.
Yeah.
Let's look at God's perspective for a minute. 1 Kings chapter 21. Sometime later, there was an incident involving a vineyard belonging to Naboth the Jezreelite. The vineyard was in Jezreel, close to the palace of Ahab, king of Samaria. Ahab said to Naboth, "Let me have your vineyard to use for a vegetable garden, since it is close to my palace. In exchange, I will give you a better vineyard, or if you prefer, I will pay you whatever it is worth." But Naboth replied, "The Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my fathers." So Ahab went home sullen and angry because Naboth the Jezreelite had said, "I will not give you the inheritance of my fathers." He lay on his bed, sulking, and refused to eat. His wife Jezebel came in and asked him, "Why are you so sullen? Why won't you eat?" He answered her, "Because I said to Naboth the Jezreelite, 'Sell me your vineyard, or if you prefer, I will give you another vineyard in its place.' But he said, 'I will not give you my vineyard.'" Jezebel, his wife, said, "Is this how you act as king over Israel? Get up and eat. Cheer up. I'll get you the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite." So she wrote letters in Ahab's name, placed his seal on them, and sent them to the elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's city with him. In those letters she wrote, "Proclaim a day of fasting and seat Naboth in a prominent place among the people. But seat 2 scoundrels opposite him and have them testify that he has cursed both God and the king. Then take him out and stone him to death." So the elders and nobles who lived in Naboth's city did as Jezebel directed in the letters she had written to them. They proclaimed a fast and seated Naboth in a prominent place among the people. Then 2 scoundrels came and sat opposite him and brought charges against Naboth before the people, saying, "Naboth has cursed both God and the king." So they took him outside the city and stoned him to death. Then they sent word to Jezebel, "Naboth has been stoned and is dead." As soon as Jezebel heard that Naboth had been stoned to death, she said to Ahab, "Get up and take possession of the vineyard of Naboth the Jezreelite that he refused to sell you. He is no longer alive, but dead." When Ahab heard that Naboth was dead, he got up, went down to take possession of Naboth's vineyard. Now, what do you think of Ahab?
Murderer.
A murderer?
He misused his power.
Misuse of power? How do we know that? We just got through the question of whether or not the state can steal. We could also the question, can the state murder? So here we have a situation where the king, the state, has now taken the property of an individual. How does God see this? That's what's important to us at this point, is it not? Let's read on. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah the Tishbite. "Go down to meet Ahab, king of Israel, who rules in Samaria. He is now in Naboth's vineyard, where he has gone to take possession of it. Say to him, 'This is what the Lord says. Have you not murdered a man and seized his property?' Then say to him, 'This is what the Lord says. In the place where dogs licked up Naboth's blood, dogs will lick up your blood. Yes, yours.'" What did God think?
That it was murder.
He saw it as murder.
And stealing. And stealing.
He saw it as theft.